thank everybody who's participated in this anthology in any way. And there, I mean, really, it does take a village. And this anthology would not have been produced if you guys didn't trust us with your submissions. So I want to thank anybody, whether you got accepted or not, for having the courage to send your baby out there to be looked at by strange eyes. I want to thank the artists who contributed to the book. Bob Rhodes, who did our book design, and Les Sazak, who did some photography for us, as well as Mimi Carroll and Jean Locke and Windflower and Mary Ellen Campbell, who contributed their beautiful pictures to us. I want to thank Amy McGee, who was our production manager, and of course Sharon Bowers and our beloved Doug Fortier, who did the art design. I want to thank especially Betty, Elizabeth Reynolds, and Mike Wynn, who kept track of your submissions when I was not able to do that. I want to thank the judges who read the pieces and commented on them, and the copy editors who offered editing advice so that all of your work shined. I want to thank the proofreaders who read your work for misspellings before it went to the printer, or any punctuation or extra spaces. I want to thank, I just want to thank everybody for being part of the team. I would like to read off the team if I could. So thank you to Henry Ben Susan and Joycelyn Trigg, Windflower, Barbara Mckay, Claire Zerling, Nancy McClelland, Elizabeth Reynolds, Peter Nash, Karen Lewis, Donald Shepard, Mike Wynn, Robin Koski, Amy McGee, Erlene Gleisner, Norma Watkins, Kelly Dowse, Priscilla Coleman, Bill Regan, Nadi Bumpo, Nadi Osa, Susan Lundgren, of course, Catherine Marshall, Katie Pye, Fran Schwartz, Leslie Walquist, Ora Young, Molly Dwyer, Maureen Epstein, and Jean Locke. Thank you, thank you. So,
and I think we should all applaud Nona for all of her hard work.
So what my question. So what I would like to do, there was a small glitch between the proofreader's excellent vision and the printer this year, and I would like to make amends for that because Catherine Brown, not all of her piece got printed. So we're going to make a special exception here, give Catherine some more time so you can hear her very funny story, The Neighbors. Catherine?
Thank you, Nona. And don't worry, folks, it's only 50 pages and I read really fast, so just settle in. Okay, The Neighbors. Curiosity overcomes me about the new owner of the blue house on my south side, and I ask around. Molly Morgan, who lives on the other side of that house, says she and her husband scurried out to introduce themselves when they first saw the buyer walking the fence line with the realtor. She says the buyer appeared young, perhaps early 30s. He told her his name was Juan, but gave no surname. Molly Morgan says he seemed nice enough, but reeked of Mary Jane. I'm surprised she knows what marijuana smells like, since she's a preacher's wife. Makes me wonder about her past. I'll have to keep my eye on her. Juan moves in one Friday after I've gone to bed. The middle of the night occupancy wakes me because of his friends. One, a husky-looking woman, yells up and down the neighborhood at 2 a.m. for her dog Spike. Through the open windows of Juan's house, I hear male laughter and lots of "fuck man, awesome." Another young woman, stiff and doe-eyed in my flashlight beam, stands on Juan's lawn carrying a box covered by a blanket. "Sorry if we disturbed you," she says. I focus on Spike's owner, who scares 3 raccoons away from the Petersons' trash. From the torn, scattered cartons on the ground, it appears the Petersons ordered dinner from Lee's Chinese again. The calories and salt content in that meal. Wanda Peterson should know better. Gary Peterson, large as a baseball field, takes blood pressure medicine. He's been in the line in front of me at the pharmacy, and as I scooted closer, I overheard the pharmacist explain the medication. Wanda needs to take better care of Gary, ensure he eats a decent meal because men don't have the sense to respect their bodies, though they sure expect women to look forever 17. Maybe Wanda feeds him Chinese on purpose. They've been married 31 years, and Gary can be an asshole. So I can't say I blame her. I come back inside from the wand party and keep the lights off so those hoodlums can't see me peering through my windows. Too dark to recognize any of their goods. What they don't haul in is furniture or clothes or appliances. What Juan does own is at least 4 pairs of blackout curtains to cover his front door, patio, and the 2 bedrooms that face me. 1 pair doesn't close so well. Still, my binoculars can't make out anything specific in that room. Every evening, I park by the blinds when I hear Juan come home. He never carts in groceries. When he has the front door open, I walk by and introduce myself on the pretense of looking for my cat. It's an indoor cat, but what would he know? Before Juan shuts the door, I count 6 bongs sitting on an overturned cardboard box. His black Dodge truck, covered in layers of dust, screams pot field worker, or grower, or even owner, though then he'd drive a nicer vehicle. No wonder that wild Molly Morgan is anxious to make his acquaintance, a new source. Maybe she smokes a doobie in the ladies' restroom during Pastor Morgan's sermons. Or maybe she smokes before sex to get her motor running. The tedium of missionary position. The morning after the wand party, I asked Kay, who lives on my north side, if she heard anything. She shakes her head. She and her husband, Doug, go to bed early and are heavy sleepers. I know because it's lights out over there at 8:30 and there's never a sound afterward. She and Doug keep their windows cracked and I pay attention. They're a young couple too. They probably need tips from Molly Morgan on how to spice up their sex life. Wyatt, who lives across the street from Kay and Doug, is a butcher. He raises chickens in his backyard. Wonder if he's ever caught Doug in the hen house craving real meat after one of Kay's tofu loaves, a pecking bird clutched in his fist. Doug wouldn't have the heart to kill it, though. He'd have to pay Wyatt to do the slaughter and ask Sandy, Wyatt's wife, to cook it. Judging by Sandy's big woman clothing company deliveries, Sandy knows her way around a stove, unlike clueless Tofu Kay. Art and Jane live next to Wyatt and Sandy. Art works on his house like a battery-operated robot with a fresh daily battery. He's employed by the power company, early hours too, goes in by 7. Maybe he's getting zapped by something and that's what pumps energy through his veins. Doug and Wyatt watch Art and shake their heads. You're making us look bad, they yell. Kay and Sandy nod and glance at Jane with envy. If a dead insect hits Art's sidewalk, he's out there sweeping. We won't even talk about Christmas lights. Art's wife, Jane, on the other hand, leaves for work at 8:58 for her 9 o'clock shift at the bank, which is a 10-minute drive. She returns for lunch at 11 and doesn't get back into her car until 12:17. Guess the bank doesn't mind this inability to read clocks. She's home and in her lounger by 4:57. I need stronger binoculars, but it looks like she watches the Hallmark Channel. It's a sad day when Kay and Doug decide to move. I love hearing their little girls giggle. Mark and Sharon buy their place and immediately remodel. I hear sledgehammers slam into the walls and watch trucks arrive bearing granite slabs and a stainless steel refrigerator. Sharon wears her hair in an Aunt Bee style bun, but she doesn't possess Aunt Bee sweetness. She's tight-lipped and unfriendly. Every top she dons is a blue shapeless thing designed to help hide her beach ball body. Don't know what attracted Mark to her sourness, but he has his faults. He grins often, but never shuts up. Say hello and Mark will snag you for a boring hour. I never see the two exchange a loving touch or word. Guess Mark talked Sharon's ears off long ago. They have an awful dog. Barks all day and night and sounds like a Rottweiler crossed with a pig. Can't see well enough with my binoculars through the fence slats to identify the breed. Although the entire yard is fenced in, Sharon escorts that animal outside 3 times a day while it does its business. The dog tears out barking at something, then barks at something else and something else, though there's nothing there. Sharon screams, "Lulu, Lulu, Lulu." The dog is mental, maybe caused by her. Sharon asked about the shabbiness of Juan's yard, which grows 5-foot weeds in the summer. I tell her the neighbors keep a check on the place. Someone will call the fire marshal if he doesn't cut them down. Me. I mention Juan being a drug dealer, grower, member of the Mexican mafia. The mafia knowledge comes from my weeks of sleuthing the 2 shiny black SUVs with tinted glass that appear every 2 months like clockwork. Juan parks his truck on the street instead of his driveway in anticipation of their arrival. Must be his bosses picking up the goods. I share the news with Sharon and hope she'll get disgusted and move. I don't tell her about the snapshots I've taken of Juan's back garage, how there's a big old fan system with wads of wire running every which way. I don't know anything about pod operations. I'm not like Molly Morgan. I sent the pics to my sister's boyfriend's son, who used to trim for a grower. He said, based on the photographs, Juan is farming in the garage. A small potatoes thing and nothing to worry about since it's not the equipment used for a meth lab. I wonder how the boy knows what is needed for a meth lab. Some people's kids. Sharon and Mark go stay with relatives in Ukiah. Peaceful days and nights for me. No yakking Mark, no snorting, barking dog, no Sharon's high-pitched "Loo, Loo." Their absence is a fine opportunity for me to stand on my propane tank to peer through the ivy into their patio windows. I want to see what they've done to the place. There's some contraption on their counter with flashing red lights. Looks like a security camera. Heard those devices were great for tracking predators. It's pointed my way. I wonder why. So next up is Joycelyn Trigg reading That's My Girl.
Joycelyn, I know you were here. Joycelyn. Oh, Joycelyn, your mute
Muted.
is on. You're muted, so we can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
That's my girl for my daughter. The weatherman insists rain. Our hearts were set on sun and sand lazy waves. Your small face lifts to mine, and if a 3-year-old could arch an eyebrow, you would. Well, I laugh. How can anybody know what will happen? The worst will be ice cream in the car with the windows rolled up. We step into bright sun, enough to satisfy my need for a deep breath and yours for dancing on this old yellow quilt stitched with sand. I tell you the story of coming here with school friends for our annual sunburn the first day of spring break. One of those summers, a storm so big it had a name, rearranged it all. This man-made beach, now finger-marked by raking. What was its name, you ask? Camille. Say it loud and you can hear the wind and water crying, don't you think? That almost arch of the eyebrow again. Maybe it was saying, come here. Behind us, cars glare on Highway 90 like shrimp heads on a platter. Ahead, water all the way to the sky. Off like a bird, over there, you sing, pointing to the horizon. I want to go over there. Come here, I call. I chase you back to the edge for you to see the patient reaching of the gulf in case it keeps you from your own. Thank you.
Robin Kofsky, you're next.
Okay, so this is an excerpt from The Dancing Couple. Picture framing is considered a romance occupation, which is a lovely way of saying it's not terribly lucrative. As a 23-year-old, I apprenticed, and at 50, I'm the owner of our local framing and giftware store. For the most part, it is fun, if you don't mind standing for 68 hours at a stretch and working with sharp knives and handling glass, being exact down to tiny fractions of an inch, making highly nuanced color choices, and executing matte cutting and molding assembly with flawless precision. Most framers love their profession because it's mentally, physically, technically, and creatively challenging, and we spend intimate time with some incredible art. Lastly, making people happy, imagining their beautiful new piece gracing their home or bringing a family member to tears of happiness is rewarding. No one would ever imagine blacklisting and hush money might be required. When the Eckersons brought in their 32 by 40 inch signed limited edition to be reframed, I sincerely meant it when I said, wow, that is a nice lithograph. The subject matter was a Zoftig couple dancing at what looked like a beer hall in Munich in the late 1920s. It was romantic. I loved it. Not that my opinion on the art ever affected my framing duties. Do you think so? Diane Eckerson said. It's been under my bed for 5 years. We want to have it reframed. Her husband, tall, blonde, and silent, began meandering the store. You came to the right place. What do you suggest? The frame was a scratched, hefty black metal with Arctic white matting. It was the type of generic framing used for art auction pieces on cruise ships. I like to start with the matting, so let's look at some options, I said, pulling out the acid-free samples always used on signed limited editions and selected a few warm whites. I showed her the possibility of picking up on the vibrant red of the woman's dress with an inner matte. I wonder what it would look like the other way around, Diane said as she reversed the matte board samples, placing the red on top. What do you think? The red blew out the composition, eclipsed the beauty of the woman, and made the couple's skin look bloated and unhealthy. Of course, I didn't voice my opinion. I like the red because it fits a feeling of tango, she said. A diminutive, feral-featured brunette, I imagined Diane at tango lessons in a slinky black dress and pointy heels. The scene depicted an accordionist in the band behind the dancing couple. but I was fairly certain they were dancing to a polka. Red is a big color statement, so be sure you really like it and can live with it over time. Well, I'm not sure, she said. We tried 10 more matting choices, and an hour later, she chose my initial suggestion. Yay! I set aside an early morning for their job, wanting a quiet time to start the project before the store was open. As I was opening the store, I got a call from Diane. Is our job done yet? I'm working on it, but I can't guarantee the timing. Didn't you say not to rush, that you'd be gone for a month? I thought you said your usual turnaround was 2 weeks. We're coming up to Fort Bragg today. Can't it be done? Really? I'm afraid I can't promise it today, I said. I'm disappointed, she said. We're leaving town tomorrow. I wanted to pick it up and have it hung. I hope you'll take care of it. It's in good hands and we'll be waiting safely in our cupboard for your return. Have a great trip. As I worked, I mused about the dancing couple. Were they Jewish? If so, their extra padding might help them survive the years to come. Were they Aryan? Probably. They looked like working class, out on the town on a Saturday night during an innocent time. Finishing the project, putting paper on the back, attaching wire and a courtesy hanger, I decided the dancing man owned a butcher shop. And during World War II, his wife left little deli packages in the back alley for a family sequestered down the street. Yes, that was it. I put the certificate of authenticity on the back, along with our store sticker and some felt bumpers. I turned the picture frame over for one last inspection. Wunderbar, I whispered to my sweet dancing duo. Next up is the marvelous Marilyn Mother Bear Scott.
Unmute here. Thank you so much. That's very sweet of you. I appreciate that. My reading today is a poem, and I want to dedicate the poem to Delphine Zavuya, for whom and about whom this poem was originally written. I also want to dedicate it to my dear friend who I miss, Doug Fortier. Of course, we all miss him. And may his spirit path be populated with many of the much of our spoken words that he loved, and some of the characters, the more benevolent characters of his own writing that he might take pleasure in. So be at peace, Doug. This poem's called At the Heart of Time. My grandfather's clock, too large for the shelf, stood on the floor, chiming the hours. Something caught my eye, a sparkle right in the center where the hands met, at the heart of the workings. A magenta bindi, sacred marker of the third eye, a timeless passage to indigo visions. It crossed the threshold in an eternal moment. You came home to the heart of us. As the days unfolded, bindis caught my glance, your ephemeral calling card in unlikely places. On the bathroom mirror, TV remotes, a green bindi at the heart of the goddess statue, and at the head of the bed we shared. Dreams ticked beyond time, an ecstatic dance of thee and me. The hands on the clock measured minutes, told the hours. There was no foretelling the coming separation. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really don't have the list. Would someone else say who's next? I'm sorry. I don't have the list up in here.
Yes, I'm next, and this is Bird Droppings, and it's memoir. Ever notice how thin the line is between humor and cruelty, and how our best jokes can come back to bite us? When I was married to the lawyer, we lived in romantic isolation in a cottage deep in the jungles of South Florida. Our house opened along the entire South Side, protected from tropical rainstorms by heavy wooden shutters that we lowered and bolted into the wall when a hurricane threatened. The place had been built by a ship's carpenter and his wife, who put it together using rough sawn cypress and driftwood that floated ashore along Card Sound. We spotted the ad in the Miami Herald, hand-built house, cypress, oak, teak on 2 acres. When I called, the carpenter said, "It's a long way down here and you probably won't like it." We were not put off. We wanted total privacy and something that wasn't built of concrete block. We drove the 20 miles south. When we got to the address, we found only a jungle topped by large pines. A curving dirt driveway led us through a tunnel of Governor Plum and ginger. The tip of a roof appeared. "This may be it," the lawyer said. The carpenter, a huge man, stood barefooted on the front porch in a tattered pair of shorts. His wife wore a sarong. Both were tanned and smelled of sweat and weed. They watched us silently, a lawyer and his teacher wife in city clothes and shoes. Inside, the walls were cypress, the floors oak, the slanted ceilings pine. Upstairs, a long, narrow sleeping loft. To reach it, you climbed a telephone pole with hand and foot holes. I crept awkwardly up ahead of the woman. "Nothing to be scared of," she said. Out every window, a tangle of pine, palmetto, and guava trees, not one neighbor in sight. We moved in and set about simple living. "We need to deserve this house," the lawyer said. "We must be pure." Our lamps held 40-watt yellow bug lights. We ate off unbreakable wooden plates. An ancient ceiling fan kept us cool. In winter, a tiny wood stove warmed us. Upstairs in the loft, we slept on a mattress on the floor. We bought birds, peacocks, golden pheasants, fantail pigeons. They lived in a large wire cage next to the house and were locked inside a wooden enclosure at night. Home from work each day, we shed our city skins. The lawyer wore striped Guatemalan pants and went bare-chested. I wore long, loose dresses. We read under our yellow lights until bedtime, locked the birds inside their enclosure, and climbed the pole to bed. I could go up and down one-armed now, like a monkey. The lawyer had certain odd notions about hygiene. He put deodorant not only under his arms, but on top of his shoulders, as if he possessed a special smelly gland the rest of us lacked. Every morning, he sat on the back steps, rubbing talcum powder between each toe. Over the years, the pine straw around the steps turned white. I enjoyed playing on these anxieties. One night when he crawled into bed, I said, "Did you remember the birds?" "No," he went down to fasten them up. When he returned, I looked at his feet. "I hope you didn't go into that pen barefooted." "Why?" I saw the fear in his eyes. "Don't you know there are diseases you can pick up from walking barefooted in bird shit? Stuff you can't even wash off?" I didn't know any such thing. He leapt out of bed, clambered down the pole, and ran into the bathroom. I heard water splashing in the tub. I heard him lathering his feet with soap and the nail brush scrubbing. I had to cover my mouth to keep my cackling from being heard below. Back upstairs, he pulled the sheet over his damp feet. "Do you think it will be all right?" I had wiped away my tears of laughter. I gave him a kind, concerned look. I certainly hope so. Years later, when the lawyer and I had gone our separate ways, I went for an eye examination. The doctor shined a light into one eye. "I see some interesting pigmentary scarring," he said. "What?" "It looks like ocular histoplasmosis." "That sounds terrible. Hasn't affected your eyesight," the doctor said, "and I don't see any recent lesions. Humans pick it up from bird droppings, usually pigeons. Do you spend much time around birds?" And next up is Barbara Mckay.
So, and I remind everybody to turn your sound off. Is Barbara available? Is that working or is Nona reading?
Would Barbara like me to read for her? I think so, huh?
Go ahead.
I'm very privileged to read these poems. The first one is Take My Hand by Barbara Mckay. We walk slowly, keeping time with your wish to say goodbye slowly. Slowly say goodbye to time itself. I gazed at the pond I love, wait at the crest of the hill we used to climb, watch the sunset until twilight descended on the valley where we spent our childhood. Where are you now, my love? Lost in non-existence while I remain in the present, wishing for the past. Can you be found? Reach back then and take my hand. And then the second of Barbara's poems is The Sound of Silence. Not a bird chirping. Let me start again. Not a bird chirping, not a breeze stirring, not a voice whimpering, nor an ocean wave curling, just the sound of silence in the surround. You can hear it as it caresses your overburdened mind, even silencing the whisper of a feather as it falls to the ground. Thank you for letting me read that, Barbara.
So next is,
The next
go ahead.
next person up is Nancy Harris McClellan.
Is she here?
Okay, I unmuted. Did that work? Am I
Yes.
there?
Yep.
Okay,
Good.
good. My first poem is Safe Distance, and it's for my friend James. He finds his place beneath the aspen trees. 'Tis the season of cancerous lesions. I have to save face. He smiles at his witticism, not wanting criticism for sitting at a distance. He moves in and out of sight in the dappled summer light. I choose a rock close enough to talk about monarch butterflies and mountain bluebirds, yet safely away. There's no moving closer, at least not today. And my second poem is Thinking Inside the Box. I much prefer to think inside the box these days because the cardboard walls provide a sane asylum, a sanctum sanctorum for thoughts not fraught with desperation. This unpaid staycation frees me for contemplation of happy thoughts, like the aesthetics of corrugation, frees me from reckless musings on what I can't control, like the coming recession and vaccination suspicion. I'm tired of collective consternation and political gall. I'll stick to a lotus position inside my box and think about nothing at all. Next is Donald Shepard.
So is Donald
I'm
here?
not seeing Donald in the house here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, well, let's go on to Natty then.
All right. My poem is The Word Angler. At 75, I'd become an avid angler, a fisher of words, casting for the one that nibbled and fled, tangled my line, leaving me pulling at strands of a tortured syntax, eager to reel in my utterance to a happy end. I drop my line into still pools, where shadowy forms glide in the shallows, taunting me, dangling on the tip of my tongue. But my hook comes up empty as the elusive words glide by. Blind casting, trolling, plumbing deep memory pools, angling for a tenuous hold, cornered into an enforced creativity, reluctant architect of a novel syntax to shore up the unexpected catch. I sit patiently now in the interstices of the pregnant pause, a sweet, precocious senility, waiting for the friend to catch up, and they, in turn, like seasoned anglers, wait for me to rummage in my tackle box. Thank you. And the next person is Sally Reynolds.
Could I remind everyone to mute, please?
I just unmuted. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to read from A Cure We Only Dream Of. The summer I was 13, my father broke 5 bones in his foot. He put on a cast up to the ankle, saying to me, "This ought to go to my knee, but hell, Mona, I've got work. I can't be dragging 20 pounds of plaster around. You'll just have to help me harder." He was a country doctor in Red Dirt, Virginia, and I'd been helping him on farm visits every school break since I was 7. He'd call out, "Ready, ready," as he headed for the door, and I'd run to join him. I knew all his instruments, their uses, their places, his grunts and gestures. I kept his list of medications, knew the common rural ailments and their treatments, and sometimes he'd let me clean a wound and change a bandage. Nothing was ever said about my becoming a doctor someday, but he called me his prime assistant and told my mother he forgave her for letting her sole offspring come out with the wrong plumbing. With his foot in the cast, he couldn't shift gears in his old Ford, so he asked Ida, our cook, if her brother could drive it. No, she said, but her son Eddie had a license. "That boy old enough to drive already," Daddy said. "Fine then, long's he's responsible." To Mother, "I can pay Eddie half what I'd give a grown man, and unlike most of his kind, he'll probably turn into acceptable help." Mother said, "Mona can't go, not with him in the car. Sometimes alone with him, I'd be worried even if it was a white boy. And it's time she learned girls are interested in other things." I almost yelled aloud. Eddie and I had known each other forever. I hated the things girls were interested in. I waited for Daddy to tell her he couldn't do without me, but he said nothing. The next day, Eddie came. Daddy said, "You got a license, boy?" Eddie was all dressed up, crisp white shirt, tie. His dark round face was shining like a Whitman sampler chocolate, the one with the cherry inside. He said, "Yes, sir," and handed Daddy a piece of black paper with white typing. "Can you drive this car?" "Yes, sir." Daddy studied the license. "You responsible?" "Yes, sir." "Well, we'll see. If you cut up, it'll go hard on your mother." Eddie got in the driver's seat, Daddy in the back. I started to get in next to him. "Not this time, monkey. Usually when he called me that, things were good. Your mother says no." The next day again, I couldn't go. And the next, "Why?" I asked. Mother said, "Because we said so." I thought my father, who always insisted on a valid reason, would object to that at least, but he hurried past me out to where Eddie was waiting in the car. I wanted to kill Mother. I went inside and watched Ida ironing Daddy's and Eddie's shirts. Was I supposed to be interested all of a sudden? It was the most boring thing on earth. I thought of telling Ida what Daddy said about not paying Eddie as much as a man, but that would be too mean. Whenever Daddy and Eddie went, I followed in my head. Through the woods, along the river, you could take me blindfolded anywhere in the county and I'd know this was Purdy's field or a mile to the fishing hole and so on. That car was my schoolroom. Daddy taught me math and science along with the medical things. He'd end every lesson with, remember, monkey, these people are the salt of the earth. Did Eddie get to carry the black bag? Was Eddie assisting? On the long home stretch, Daddy and I would sing Old Rugged Cross, or he'd glance over at me and start, come, come, come to the church in the wildwood. And I'd sing the harmony till my throat closed shut with all my longings. Did he and Eddie sing? The next Sunday, he got an emergency call. A farmer had been tossed under his tractor and his leg was hurt. Come quick, his wife shouted. She was calling from the preacher's phone and she hung up before he could ask questions. Daddy phoned Ida, get Eddie here. I've got a hot one. Eddie had been driving my father for nearly a month now. One day I asked Ida how old Eddie was and she said, 14. I knew you had to be 15 for a license. I was nursing this. What would it get me if I told? I was going to tell if they didn't let me go. The next reader is Stephen Saponz.
Who actually, Les Sizik is going to read his piece, yeah.
Yes, that's me, Les Sizik, and I'm reading for Steve. And when you hear this, you're going to want to read the rest of the story for yourself, for sure. A clearing in the desert. Walking across the salt flats toward the barren thrusts of granite bordering them, Rulon felt at home with himself. He hadn't felt that way for a very long time, if he'd ever felt that way before. He relished the August sun burning into his back. 105 in the shade, they'd be saying back in Salt Lake. But here there was no shade. Of course, not even that fleeting little dot, if that would be cast by a vulture flying overhead, circling, waiting for the trudging man to fall. He thought about looking up to see if there were any birds circling, if not a vulture, some crazy gull thinking he might have a piece of bread or chocolate, a peanut even to throw up to him, whip it in the air so the bird could catch it on the fly. He'd enjoyed doing this elsewhere, done it often, but this was not the time. He'd come here to be by himself, to be the only living thing in the world he could see, hear, smell, touch, or taste. He didn't look up nor strain to hear. He was content to smell, taste, and feel only the salt and the heat. He'd considered peeling off his clothes as he walked across the salt. Then he could have felt at one with nature, stark and naked as the salt flats themselves, at one with the sun cooking his flesh while it was still on his bones. He had imagined that riding out from Salt Lake that morning. At first, it had seemed like a good idea, an apt metaphor for what he wanted in throwing off his life to come back here to finish, back to where he was born, full circle, going out of the world naked as he'd come in. Of course, there'd be a big difference too, but they'd all be for the better. Being born amidst the blood, mucus, and goo the foul wrappings, all the labored, sweating and tangled, contradictory, ensnaring emotions of the birthing room, replaced by lying absolutely alone, baked clean by the simple, burning, uncaring sun, ending, including his. But he'd finally decided against stripping, feeling it was just too trite, not wanting either to give a cheap thrill to the tourists at the Bonneville Visitor Center, wondering what kind of crazy he must be to be out here on a blistering
Les, you went mute for some reason. So the last paragraph or so we couldn't hear. There you go.
I'm very sorry. Don't know how that happened. Well, he decided against taking his clothes off, blah, blah, blah. Not wanting to either be a cheap thrill to the tourists at the Bonneville Visiting Center, wondering what kind of crazy he must be to be out here on a blistering summer day. So he kept his clothes on, felt the sun baking his back beneath his denim shirt, felt it moving into him, not like a burning knife, but as a scouring blanket spreading across him, drawing the fluids out of him, reaching down all the way to his bones to purify and claim him. The heat hurt so much, but felt so good. He rotated his shoulders, flexed his biceps, closed and opened his fingers as he walked so he could feel the sun more keenly as tissue moved across tissue, ligament on ligament, muscle on muscle, opening every hidden space, welcoming in the cooking rays of heat. He walked steadily, neither fast nor slow, looking straight ahead or down, never side to side, never back, seeing only the white salt, gray granite, blue sky, the glare forcing his irises to close to the merest dots, feeling only the sun on his back, the heat coming through the soles of his shoes, and the sweat percolating through his skin as his body vainly tried to cool itself. Everything was as it should be. Rulon left Salt Lake while still in college, abandoning the U, as locals called the university, and Zion, as Mormons called their homeland, to seek his fortune elsewhere, make his life out there, or at least discover himself somewhere. Not an unusual story, of course, not even unusual in its motivation. The son of a famous father, elder of the church, governor of the state, overwhelmed by the expectations to measure up, feeling that he never could, escapes the pressure to stake out his own life elsewhere. And our next reader is Peter Nash.
Peter was
Peter,
here.
you out there?
I'm not seeing Peter anywhere.
Yeah, he was at Priscilla's.
He's there.
Oh. Oh,
muted.
so Priscilla needs to,
Unmute. Priscilla needs to unmute.
Here we go.
there we are.
This is called Ode to a Banana Slug. 6 inches long and limp as a post-coital penis. You creep across the path to a green swath of miner's lettuce. Leading with your cap and tentacled eyes like a French tickler, your sticky yellow length propelled by a legless foot protruding from your belly, you couple among cool leaves and branch shadows, enveloped in mucus, exchanging sperm, extruding translucent eggs, abandoned as soon as they are laid. O faithless father, incidental mother, what fate has befallen you, bisexual offspring of winged messenger Hermes and Aphrodite, goddess of love? Neither fleet nor lovable, you are destined to wander the forest floor of damp latitudes, seeking your mirror image on carpets of slime. I had planned to speed through 2 poems within 5 minutes, but instead I'd like to say a few words about my friend Doug, a 4th year who died last week. He and I made a deep connection over our writing and met once weekly at his home. As many of you know from the latest anthology of Borders, Doug won multiple awards for short fiction and was featured in many club anthologies. He was an excellent critiquer and never left me cringing. I learned so much from him and marveled that he could write about so many subjects with great authenticity. But most important was that Doug was a kind and generous man. I am so grateful for his friendship, and I will miss him greatly.
Nona, you're up next. Nona, you need to unmute.
That would be helpful. It's a memoir piece, The World Beyond Window A. I graduated from UCLA in the spring of 1966 with a BA in English and a minor in political science, which qualified me for exactly no kind of job.
Hold on a second, Nona. Can everybody unmute? I mean, mute, please, so we can hear her.
Okay. Okay, that degree qualified me for exactly no kind of job in the real world. So I decided to stay in school for a while longer. Actually, it would be more accurate to say I decided to stay at school. I got a job staffing Window A in the administration building on campus. Window A is where students go when they've lost their registration card and need a new one. It's where they can change their majors and order a copy of their transcripts when they discover UCLA is not the hotbed of political activity they'd hoped for at college. In other words, Window A is as close to a mommy as students are likely to find on a university campus. After 11 months on the job, I began to scan the want ads in the newspapers for a job in a more grown-up world. It wasn't long before I came across a posting by the County of Los Angeles for social workers. The qualifications listed a college degree, didn't specify majors, a valid California driver's license, and a clean background check. I didn't believe the jaywalking ticket I got in high school would disqualify me. I took an afternoon off and drove into downtown LA to fill out an application. I wasn't concerned. I knew nothing about what a social worker did. I was smart and a quick study, and I was certain I could pick up the job duties, whatever they were, in no time. I hadn't a clue this career choice would take me as far away from mommying at Window A as I could imagine. A few days after the interview, I was hired and given an address to report to for a 2-week training course. I arrived early on my first day and entered a conference room where our training sessions would be held. Tables were arranged in a formation with a lectern at the opening. Notebooks had been placed at each of the 15 seats around the tables. I glanced around the room and found that, with the exception of a middle-aged Black man with close cropped hair and a sense of dignity about him, the others were just like me, young, white, female. The complexion of the room changed only slightly as the rest of the trainees filed in. Two middle-aged Hispanic women found seats together and conversed in whispered Spanish. Another Black man arrived, younger than the first and with a noticeable limp. At exactly 9 a.m., an attractive woman sporting a substantial afro walked into the room and up to the lectern. She was followed by 4 others who seated themselves in the empty chairs set against the back wall. "Hello," she greeted us. "My name is Brenda Miller, and I'll be your instructor for the next 5 days. Welcome to Social Work 101. She chuckled to let us know she'd made a small joke, and we chuckled back to let her know we got it. And so it began. I grew up in the hills of the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. Our family wasn't rich, but we were comfortable and wanted for nothing. I knew there were poor people in the world, but I never thought much about how they made ends meet or where they lived. I wasn't so much an entitled person as an oblivious one. That would change over the next few days. The people who entered the room with Brenda were social workers who worked in the 4 areas of financial aid that the state of California offered. And over the course of the week, we learned about them, and we learned about food stamps and what you could and couldn't purchase with them. We were introduced to Medicaid, California's basic health and dental insurance for low and no income individuals. We were instructed about home visits and how to dictate our reports to be transcribed by someone we would never meet. We became acquainted with the qualifications to get into one of LA's 5 housing projects for low-income residents and what could get someone evicted from one. We were taught about budgets and learned of the paltry monthly allotments known as welfare for each category. I might have been naive, but even I could see it would be impossible to exist with any degree of comfort or dignity under those financial limitations. It was fitting then that by week's end, we were introduced to Sharona Johnson, a buxom Black woman with major presence. Mrs. Johnson was a representative from LA County's Welfare Rights Organization, and she spoke to us about clients' rights to lodge complaints against social workers. But her larger message was to inform us of welfare recipients' entitlements, the most important of which was the right to be treated with respect. When she finished speaking, she asked if we had any questions. I scanned the room. If she'd meant to intimidate us, she'd succeeded. Eyes were wide, lips pursed, except for the Black man with the close cropped hair. He looked at Mrs. Johnson with twinkling eyes and a smile that I interpreted as pride. There you have it. And the next person to be reading is
Can you hear me?
yes, Audrey Wells.
Yes. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I've kind of kept myself entertained by writing an ongoing poem about masking through the pandemic. Then here's part of it. Mask on. First, Mimi says she will wear a mask on the airplane back in February 2020. And I wince. Mimi, is that really necessary? Foolish me. By April, we are warned to mask it or casket. Women sent to sewing. Some men too, but I don't know any. I dig and find one leftover vacuum bag to cut for filters. Proud of my ingenuity. Pipe cleaners make a comeback as nose pinchers. I tear and save closing strips from coffee bags. Elastic availability stretches so thin it grows precious, like ball jar lids in canning season. Lucky me to have a sister who measures my head, custom makes me a mask to match my coat, another to match my eyes, a third with adjustable ear straps. The home effort. My masks dry over the towel bar like nylon hose. Nose warmers on best days, idle conversation stoppers, smile blockers. We crinkle our eyes, wave our hands. We grow devout, stash extras in glove box. Don't leave home without one. Shame the deniers. And I bring home a positive test result. A woman of the people. Let's taste that virus before the vaccines vacuum up the crumbs. County Public Health finds me at home. I've been found out. They call daily. Their name is Danielle. The powers of suggestion grab my throat. Is it sore? My tummy. Did I just want to vomit? My muscles. Is that why my back is stiff? My nose, dribbling. My mind, malaise. My body, bleary. Bleary? A word not on Danielle's list of descriptors. Do I mean foggy? No, heavens, no. I regret the test. No news is good news. I'm positive it's false. Must retest. Why? Because I feel fine. Because I am days away from my second shot. Because I am careful. Because quarantining in our little shack is a bummer. My husband is negative. His test results, his attitude. I hear a story on the television news. A woman died only one day after her positive test results. Do not dismiss. Don the masks, open the windows, slide the doors, wash the hands, wipe the surfaces. Sleep separately. Glide away from each other. Practice avoidance as if angry. But rub back to back once a day. Hippos in a muddy pond. And mask. The mask has come home. Where yesterday we could unmask, breathe openly, kiss. Cat gets all my caresses. Corona kitty. Her. Okay, thank you. And I'm happy to introduce Leslie Walquist and her delightful piece, Sugar, Spice, and Everything Nice.
Let's see. You're gonna have to mute. Hold on. Can you guys hear that echo? You can do it right there. Yeah. So this is the first couple pages of my piece, and the title will make more sense if you read the whole story. Sugar, Spice, and Everything Nice. Anticipation bounced in the molecules of warm air at the edge of the rain gutter where they crouched. A pair of headlights drew close, blanketing the dead-end road. It was tail end of citrus season, and the three girls were ready. Teresa lifted a pungent windfall orange from the plastic bucket. Leslie, an orange gripped in each hand, felt a charge of excitement. Her little sister Liz, barely 9, squeezed in next to the grate, eyes wide, and watched a shiver ripple her sister's back. The approaching beam of light put their hiding spot briefly at center stage. Wait till it rounds the corner, breathed Leslie. The car swept left. It was long, a 2-door Monte Carlo as black as the moonless night, gleaming beneath the flare of the streetlight, a real low rider. Now, Teresa shouted. Arm cocked, she sprung up and let an orange fly. Thud, it hit the passenger door. Leslie's first try overshot the trunk, but the second splattered the rear window. Liz hadn't left her spot by the grate. Good one, they hooted. Usually the assaulted cars accelerated away down the street. The girls imagined old people hobbling about, assessing their pulp-plastered cars from inside a garage. But not this one. Teresa nudged her. Hey, Les, it's stopping. And indeed, the taillights glowed a brighter red. It's backing up. The car made a reverse zigzag onto the gravel shoulder, and a huge man jumped out of the driver's side door. He started across the road at a trot. "I'll kill you, you little bastards," he shouted. "Run," yelled Teresa. But Leslie, Liz's hand in hers, was already headed down the dark alleyway. Teresa sprinted by. "We should split up," she panted over her shoulder. "I'm going to try and make it home with Liz," said Leslie. The sound of the man's boots slapping the asphalt burned in their ears. "You better run, because I'll beat the shit out of you punks when I catch you." With home turf advantage, the girls wove between patches of thick woods, scrambled up a stone wall, and cut through a neighbor's garden, where Teresa dove into a towering hedge of honeysuckle. Keep going," she waved her arm. "Keep going," Leslie echoed to Liz, dropping her sister's sweaty hand. "Run for the garage door." "I'll double back later. Go." Teresa disappeared, swallowed up inside the dark foliage. Liz had reached the gate to their backyard. It locked from the inside, which Leslie figured would slow the man down. "Over you go," she hissed, hefting Liz's bent knee and pushing her to the top. "Keep going," she commanded, pulling herself over behind Liz. But the man was too close. He'd seen them scale the gate. He cleared it in no time. Up ahead, Liz was making her way around the fish pond. Leslie knew he was right behind her. She could hear him gulping air. "Gotcha," his fingers grazed the hem of her t-shirt. In a flying leap, she vaulted the pond and rounded the corner of the house into the garage. His split-second indecision with the water obstacle had bought her a few feet. Trash cans lined the wall inside the garage. She grabbed one, flinging it out behind her as she ran. When Liz turned around to find the sound of metal rolling over concrete, Leslie pushed past her, threw open the door, clamped her sister's arm, yanked her into the house, slammed the door, and turned the bolt. Crash! His body hit the door full force. The girls held their breath as he joggled the doorknob, and then he started pounding so hard they thought it might splinter the wood. "Open up, punks," he yelled. "Go away," Leslie screamed. All of a sudden, it was quiet. The man was on the move. And that's a good place to stop. Thank you. Next up is Phillip Zerling.
Thank you. This is for Doug. I'm a librarian. I'm not really a librarian, but I play one on my block and people seem to appreciate it. About 2 years ago, I bought a little wooden box crafted to look like a house, but with a large front door and a plexiglass insert so passersby can see the contents, books. I sawed a 2x4 into a cross piece and screwed the box into a corner of the 2-foot-high wooden fence bordering my front yard. I filled it with 24 books and sat back to see what would happen. Things happened as I hoped. People took books, left books, and seemed quite happy about this little socialist experiment in sharing volumes. It works on the honor system. No one has to leave a book to take one, and many people leave books without taking any. In fact, I have many more now than when I primed the pump with those initial 24. Now, I take no credit for this phenomenon. In fact, I came to the movement late. In the last 20 years, 100,000 folks have registered little free libraries in every state and 91 countries. The thing that really knocks me out is that one guy in Wisconsin started this international effort without even realizing what he was doing. In 2009, Todd Herbert Ball, a public school teacher, salvaged some wood from a beat-up old garage door and banged together the first ever free library and mounted it on a pole at the end of his driveway. He designed the book box to look like a one-room schoolhouse and dedicated the effort to his mother, who was also a school teacher, and a book lover. Ball then built a few more book houses in the Midwest. People saw them, used them, and started making their own copies. Ball then set himself a goal of creating 2,510 little free libraries, aiming for just one more than the number of libraries across the country endowed by the immigrant industrialist turned philanthropist, Andrew Carnegie. Ball met that goal in 2012 and died from cancer in 2018 at the age of 62. But the movement he started grew into a tsunami of little free libraries that continued to encircle the globe. Now everyone gets to fill their libraries with the books of their own choosing. I try to keep a good mix of adult and children's literature. I visit my library each day to tidy up the stacks. Titles I've never heard of sometimes show up as donations. I weed out the occasional religious tract and trash left behind. Sometimes people leave the door hanging open, but no one has vandalized the box or damaged the contents. Sometimes I remove a donated book and read it myself before returning it to the library for the next person. As I said, I now have many more books than when I started, and the inventory turns over regularly. There's a brick and mortar public library about a half-mile away from my home. It closed for months during the pandemic, and the 5 or so little free libraries scattered around my town became the only source of books for people sheltering in place. Even with public libraries open again, it is sad to learn that 11,000 towns in the United States have no public library at all. People visit my book box every day. They stop, they browse. If I'm gardening out front, we chat. We usually start by talking about the weather, but then we talk about the books. One person was looking for books by Lee Child. I told him Lee Child was the worst writer I'd ever read and suggested a Joe Nesbo book instead. We agreed to disagree. I've met a lot of neighbors this way. People often thank me, which I appreciate, but mostly I do this because I enjoy giving books a second and third reincarnation. I mark each book with a rubber stamp that reads Little Free Library, always a gift, never for sale. Sometimes when I discreetly watch a neighbor browsing through my books, I marvel that just one person could start such a worldwide volunteer effort of this size. And it makes me stop and think about what each one of us might be able to accomplish ourselves. Thank you. And let me send it to Holly Tannen, batting cleanup today, I think.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and just a little bit of a sound check. If I sing a little bit like this, the sound is okay? Great.
Yes.
Okay. So I will sing you a song that I did not write. Die Gedanken sind frei. Thoughts are free is an old German folk song. Students at German universities were fond of drinking, and when they drank, they sang. Thoughts Are Free was one of their favorite drinking songs. Come 1848, revolution broke out in Germany, as in many European countries, and Die Gedanken sind frei was banned. But you can't stop people singing any more than you can stop them thinking. Die Gedanken sind frei has been translated into English many times, so I decided to try my hand at it. Where's my note? I don't know. Okay. Die Gedanken sind frei, wer kann sie erraten? Sie fliegen vorbei wie nächtliche Schatten. Kein Mensch kann sie wissen, kein Jäger erschießen mit Pulver und Blei. Die Gedanken sind frei. Die Gedanken sind frei. My mind is my treasure. Die Gedanken sind frei. My thoughts give me pleasure. No scholar can map them. No lawyer can trap them. No one can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. Die Gedanken sind frei, my mind gives me power. Die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts freely flower. The critics may blame me, deride me, and shame me, my conscience decrees. I think as I please. Though they put me on trial and cast me in prison, my thoughts all the while give voice to my vision, obeying no orders, respecting no borders, my spirit shall fly. Die Gedanken sind frei, my spirit shall fly. Die Gedanken sind frei.
Huzzah!